Hey folks, Malforian here, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at Dev Diary 19 Trade Part 2 for Grey Eminence. And it's not a huge Dev Diary this week, and there's some interesting news at the end, so we're going to get through it, and then we'll talk about it, as we always do, in the comments down below, depending on what you think and what you see today. So today we're going to continue the series of Dev Diaries on trade. The previous one, we talked about how the actual trade system itself worked, which I've covered all the Dev Diaries. There will be a link to the playlist down below, but I've covered them from launch. There's a lot of interesting stuff in there. Last week's was actually super interesting. Last month's even was super interesting because I had a lot of information about how trade's going to work, but this is how pricing and transactions are going to work in the game. So pricing, at any time within a single market, each good is a particular price determined by the previous month's iteration of that market. Also, pricing updates monthly, same as logistics, so kind of interacting together in a nice way. This price drives the behavior of all economic actors within that market for the next iteration, and that behavior in turn impacts the price for that iteration after that. So basically just updates every month, and then obviously the following month everything reacts to the price changes that have occurred in the previous month. So how exactly is the price of a good calculated? We've mentioned before that it's primarily driven by supply and demand, much like in real life in most cases, are represented by production and consumption respectively. In each market. The more a given market produces a good compared to consuming it, the lower its price will be, and vice versa, which sounds pretty straightforward. And it is. It is as simple as that. You know, if you have more of a good, it's going to be cheaper for someone to buy. If it's scarce, it's going to be more expensive. However, since markets are interconnected and form larger long-distance trade routes, especially in the first half of the game, prior to railroads unlocking multi-province markets, they discussed this last week, where once you get railroads, you can basically make huge markets. So before railroads come, you'd have independent, well, not independent, but markets for each like duchy and province are separate. Once you get railroads, you get like kingdom-wide markets. So everything kind of gets a bit more unified at that point, which is really, really cool. It's going to be awesome to see how that plays out in the game, kind of going from those smaller markets to having these huge ones. So that is going to be a massive change when you encounter that. Pricing formula is also considered imports and exports because, again, that affects supply and demand. This helps us solve the problem of linking a source of goods to a distant sink that might be multiple market connections away without considering imports and exports. Intermediary markets won't be able to adequately move goods along the chain without first building on massive stockpiles. It wouldn't work if you didn't include imports and exports because you could just do crazy stuff. So I think it makes sense this way. This is how I would have presumed it would work. So it's kind of is confirmed to work that way. The exact parameters of a pricing formula is still subject to change, but at its core, it's essentially the base price, which is static per good depending on its supply chain complexity, multiplied by a ratio of the difference between production and imports and consumption and exports. As an example, with non-final variables, obviously this is all subject to change. If a good has a base price of 1, but its consumption and exports outpaces production and imports by a factor of 5, the final price of the market will be 5. Pretty obvious. I'm sure it'll get a little bit more fiddly when it comes out, but I hope it does kind of stay, I won't say this is simple, but in a way that at a glance you can understand why something has changed price. I would hope it stays that way. There's got to be a lot of complexity in this game, and some things like this, I just want to be able to look at something and know how it's working. There are a couple of balancing mechanisms that we've added to the pricing mechanism to make sure it is more resilient to major fluctuations and shocks for any iteration. The new price is clamped to be within 50% of the old one. Of course, this won't prevent price spikes due to genuine shortages, but it does provide enough leeway to smooth out minor disruptions caused by temporary issues, such as rerouting of goods due to embargoes. So yeah, it prevents crazy price changes. If something's out for, like I said, if you have an embargo for like a month, it's not going to just crazy fluctuate the price. It is going to be tied 50% each month in changes. So it can gradually go down 50%, then 50% the next month if it's, crazy off the scale, but it's not going to be able to just go from like 0 to 100 and things like that. So I kind of would have thought it maybe would be less than that. So I don't know, maybe 25% would be better. But again, I guess in real life, if you're doing a war and then somebody embargoes your main port, prices don't wait around for 2 months to change. You immediately see that change. So I can see it this way as well. I think this would take some tuning, but I do like that it's not just immediately going to go crazy. It is going to give you that little bit of a leeway in the changes as you see them. Transactions. Fundamentally, the pricing system exists to enable transactions between the merchants of a given market and the suppliers and customers. or between the merchants of two interconnected markets. These transactions move goods around and facilitate the entire economic process of the game, so there's an important process to get right. Note that we've gone through multiple iterations of the transaction system, and one described above may not be the final one, but we're confident that we arrived at a pretty satisfactory solution overall. Let's start by covering local transactions. These occur within a market between its merchants and either suppliers or customers. As confirmed previously, each market has its own stockpile of each good. This stockpile is owned by the merchants of that particular market. In the case of multi-province markets, the stockpile is considered jointly owned by everyone in there, basically. Kind of makes sense, it wouldn't work otherwise. Whenever a building produces goods, it will immediately sell those goods to the local market stockpile. Similarly, whenever a population or building or character consumes goods, it buys them from the local market stockpile. So yeah, they use the local supply first, and then they move on to the other areas to try and get the required resources that they need. Thus, local transactions always occur via the merchants, who serve as permanent middlemen by design. Due to their omnipresence, merchants cannot refuse local transactions. They'll always buy, sell to local producers, consumers at the current market price. As compensation for their inability to consent, we've added a slight markup to the price of all local transactions in favor of these merchants. This ensures that they will always have a small baseline level of profit, which ensures that local economies, particularly subsistence ones which predominate in 1356, can run smoothly. While the market is currently fixed, and as usual it's subject to change, we're planning on linking it up to the country's economic laws, but that is a topic for another time, so I'm going to go into how that is going to work with the laws that you kind of implement in your realm, and obviously other people do as well. Now we'll continue to external transactions. This is kind of trade, I imagine, which will occur between two connected markets. Here we'll find significantly more consent than in local transactions. In fact, external transactions are always voluntary and are always driven by profit. During each iteration of the trade system, each market scans connected markets looking for profitable import trades, accounting for costs and all that stuff. Similar to the partial fulfillment we utilize in consumption production, once all the imports requests are aggregated, they'll be fulfilled entirely, if stockpiles permit, or partially in proportion to the size of their stockpiles. Crucially, it is the importer who pays all the initial costs and thus takes on the risk of his stockpile being less valuable in future iterations of the trade system. So yeah, when it's talking about iterations, it is talking about that monthly kind of cycle of the costs and everything like that. That's kind of what it's talking about. You know, you could buy something now and then the next month it's worth less. Well, that's your problem for buying so much of it. And that's basically how it's going to work. Similar to the internal one, but this is allowing people to kind of pick and choose. Obviously, internally, that permanent middleman system for local transactions, and that is basically just to make it run. Otherwise, I think you could have resources that are basically at a loss in a way, and they just never move anywhere because none of the traders will want to move it. So I can see why this is kind of forced, because otherwise stuff could just get stuck places and could just never move. Obviously, external ones, you have to volunteer into this because you can't just force other people to buy stuff within the trade system. So I hadn't thought about how this would work, but I think it looks quite good the way they've set it up so far anyway. This relatively simple and purely local neighbor-aware behavior allows for the organic emergence of long-distance trade routes spanning dozens of markets. At each step along the way, local merchants import goods at a profit without even being aware of any information beyond their immediate surroundings. Of course, this does mean that the changes in supply and demand take time to propagate around the network, and reroutes require radial propagation across all connections, but nevertheless the system produces surprisingly realistic outcomes considering its input data. So yeah, I can imagine if you do have that interruption, it's not as easy as, you know, you just draw a line around the interruption. You're going to have to watch. It'd be cool if there's like a map mode where you can watch how trade is flowing. I know there is one, they did show that off last time, but like it'd be cool trying to like seeing like a realistic like a heat route of like where a specific good is moving. So if something got taken, maybe all the trade is going through Cairo and then Cairo gets embargoed or something, and then just being able to watch like all that trade kind of spiraling out into different routes to get to its final destination. It's going to be if they get this working, it's going to look so cool and really drive. I think it's going to make economic wars just so good to do. You're going to be able to do a war and just be like, I'm taking that node, I want to disrupt this guy's money making ability and just absolutely destroy him, especially in the short to medium term, whilst these markets are kind of re-establishing themselves. So I think this looks really cool. And that is it though. That is it for the dev diary. It's not a big dev diary this month, and we'll go into why in the conclusion here. So that's it this time around. We're continuing on working on the closed alpha, which they did announce is coming soon. If you are on Patreon, if you supported the game up to a certain amount, you will get alpha access. But due to limited funding, we're going at a reduced pace. They've talked about this for a while now. I think around September last year, they talked about this initially. I think they're either struggling to get funding, like a publisher, I imagine, or I think they said in one of them they are getting offers, but they didn't say exactly, but I kind of got the gist. They were trying, whoever was trying to give them the money, I suppose, the deal was too restrictive on how they could make the game. I imagine they probably wanted to like condense how much was in the game or something, and they just said no, like we don't want to compromise the game, so they're just kind of funding it themselves at the moment. Considering the current speed of development, we feel it's safe to rule out a 2023 release, though. I did say that, I think, in the when they had the trailer and they announced the alpha, I think they said it was coming out in 2023. And if I remember correctly, I could be wrong. I think I said in that video I doubted very much it would come out this year. And there we go. It isn't going to come out this year unless something crazy happens. But yeah, they're just saying that we remain optimistic that with time, our community will grow to the point where we can reasonably finish the game without external financing. In addition, we're also once again temporarily suspending the release of dev diaries. Our priority basically is to get the closed alpha up and running. So they're going to focus on that. So we only just got the dev diaries back. We've had 2 dev diaries and then they're put on hold again. I mean, I like the dev diaries. I know, people who do watch the channel and watch these dev diaries also enjoy them. Can't argue with the fact that they do take resources. It's not as easy as just sitting down and just blasting out a dev diary. So, if they want to, they've got limited funds. If they want to focus on making the game, I can't argue with that. I'd rather they concentrate on the game, try getting it out and working, and especially I think once the closed alpha comes out, they can, we can all see how well the game is going. And well, it's closed alpha, but I guess people who do get to play it will be able to see how well the game's running. Yeah, hopefully it goes well, and then hopefully they can get some funding, and then we can get this game out. Even if you don't want to play the game yourself, I think having some competition, I've said this all along, having some competition in like grand strategy games is just great for everyone, because it pushes the other games to be better and better. And there's stuff in here that I would love to see come to like Europa Universalis 5 or whatever comes next from Paradox, if it's something in this era. There's just so much cool stuff in here. I hope they get it finished. I hope it does actually come out, because from what we've seen, it's looked really good so far. So anyway, we'll leave it there. And until further notice, this will be the last dev diary coverage of the game until they come back. Hopefully that is pretty soon. They did say the closed alpha is coming out relatively soon, so I imagine once it comes out, they will get the dev diaries running pretty quickly, because obviously people will be playing it, so you're going to have to kind of talk about more of the features with everyone, because people are going to be able to see how wars happen and things like that. We haven't had that covered at all yet, like how wars work. So yeah, looking forward to it coming back. Like I say, hopefully they do well. If you are interested, they do have a Discord. It's really good in there. They're always answering questions and things like that. They do have a subreddit, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and obviously the Steam page I think they have as well. Do go on there, show your support if you are interested in this. They do have a Patreon, as they say. If you are interested, go take a look and see what they have to say there. But yeah, we'll leave it there for today. I'll see you on the next one, whatever that is. If you're new here, I have covered all the dev diaries. There will be a link to it at the end of the video if you want to catch up as to what the game is. But yeah, we'll leave it there for today, and I'll see you in the next one.